Today I'll show you how I put together an assortment of different archways and doors for our modular sewer system terrain. So we're going to use a little bit of this foam board. This is from the Dollar Tree. I've trimmed it to be 2 inches wide. And then we're going to use a few of these 1-inch wide craft sticks. Those are going to be the tops and bottoms of our doors. And then some of these craft sticks, these are about 3/4 inch wide. And these are going to be used to cover the outsides. Okay, so let's go ahead and make the core sections of our doors and archways. So what do I mean by core sections? What I mean is a couple of things that are going to be used on each and every one of the doors or archways or the hidden doors. Just things that are going to be used in every single step of the build. So I'm going to start off by trimming off a section of the foam board here. Now what we have now is a section that is, grab my ruler here, 2 inches wide. And if we flip it 90 degrees, you'll see that I have trimmed it to just under 2 inches. Now that measurement is going to be important a little bit later. Basically, it's going to take into account the top and bottom of the framework. So using the same jig that I used for the modular wall sections, I'm just going to trim out the center of this piece to create the framework of a little archway. Now I'm going to speed through this pretty quickly here, but essentially what I'm going to do is just put in a pretty simple little brick pattern, just a quick little repeating thing that's going to add a little bit of visual effect without being too tedious or strenuous when it comes to putting it together. Since I'm going to need a lot of these, I don't want it to be overly complicated. It'll just kind of help the process go a little bit faster that way. Now once I've got all the lines marked in, I'm going to trace them out with a pencil just to kind of exaggerate them a little, make them easier to see, easier to work with. Alright, now that we've got that all marked out, we can just carve little notches on the inside where all of the lines kind of would wrap around the piece. Now this doesn't really do anything structurally, in fact it actually makes it a little bit weaker, but it adds a little bit of the grout line kind of wrapping around, and we can add a little bit of texture in with our texture plate and re-exaggerate the lines with a pen. Alright, there we go. That is one. We're going to need 2 of these for each wall section, so I went ahead and I made a lot more. Alright, so now that we've got the archways done, we're going to kind of make the inner core for a couple of the pieces. Now, I just took my texture roller and rolled out a little bit of the pattern onto this foam. Now you could just kind of leave it like this, but the pattern is really shallow and I'm always a little worried that it's going to kind of spring back out over time. So I'm taking an X-Acto knife and I'm very carefully cutting little shallow cuts where all of the grout lines in the pattern would be. And then I trace it all back out with a pencil just to kind of exaggerate the lines, make them easier to see, and it kind of emphasizes the design and pattern that I've kind of rolled out onto this. Okay, there we go. Now we can impress our texture onto it, and then re-exaggerate the lines with a pen, just to kind of make sure that we didn't lose any definition. Now you can also kind of chip away a couple of these, squash them down, tear little pieces off to kind of add some damage, you know, just create a little bit of variation however you'd like. Okay, so now we're going to start by making just a simple little wall, mostly because I don't want all of the sections for this build to just be little passable areas. Sometimes you want an area that's kind of closed off, make the adventuring party take a different route. This is something that you can just kind of tuck into one of those spaces to kind of make them go a different way, but still look nice and kind of fit the theme. Okay, so now that we've got that finished, we're going to make a archway. Now, this is going to be similar to the first step where we just made a couple of little arches to go on the front and back of the core, but what we're going to do here is I've offset all of the lines, and we're not going to worry about a brick pattern except for the very top, because nothing else will be visible. Then I took a piece of the craft stick, the size that I wanted the archway to be, and I took it over to the hot table and just kind of trimmed it out. Now I can attach one of the larger archways to the front and back, and that creates a nice little decorative archway that we can put into a 2-inch wide opening. And I'll make a 3-inch wide one of these off camera. Okay, now that that's done, I think it's time to make some doors. Okay, we're going to start with a simple wooden door. Now I've got one more of these craft sticks. Now I've cut this to be 1.5 inches tall. And then I trimmed a small little section off of one side just to fit a toothpick on the end of it. Then using a few coffee stirrer sticks, I attached them onto one side. And then using the top as a guide, I just kind of trimmed the edges off to give it a nice rounded top. Then I repeated the process on the other side. Now, because I trimmed a section off, we've got this little gap on one side, and that is going to fit our toothpick into it. Now, this is going to be kind of a moving door, so we're going to round out the outer sides. And this is just to reduce a little bit of the friction and give it less things to catch on as the door opens and closes. Now for the toothpick, this is a decorative one. You can use whatever kind of toothpick you'd like. I trimmed the end off and then cut it down to about a 1 3/4 inch length. Then I just kind of press it into position with a little bit of hot glue. Take a regular toothpick, poke a hole at the top of our archway, insert the toothpick, and there we go. Nice simple doorway. So now we're going to make our hidden door, or secret door, whatever you want to call it. Now I took another piece of the craft stick, cut it to, again, 1.5 inches, and we've got one of our core pieces here. And I'm just going to tape this onto the back of it, and it's going to go right in the center, aligned to the bottom. Now I can take that over to my hot table, and using the craft stick as a guide, I can very carefully trim it out, and we're going to save both pieces, the archway that we just created, as well as the piece that we taped into the craft stick. Okay, so here it is, and we're going to quickly glue on the archway on the outside. Now this is going to just give it a little bit of reinforcement while we're working. And you can kind of see what the plan is here. This is going to be our door, so it kind of blends in with the wall. Now to make the actual framework, we're going to use a couple of popsicle sticks that I trimmed to fit the length of the wall. And these are going to just go right up against where the door would go, just to add a little bit of reinforcement. And then we're going to trim a section of the craft stick here, and it's just going to go right across the top. Now I cut this to be a little bit shorter than the gap here on the foam, and the reason for that is we need to leave a gap where the toothpick is going to go to act as a hinge. So now we can make another door, and this is just going to be a little bit simpler than the previous door, because we're just going to take 4 pieces of our coffee stirrer stick, and they're just going to be glued straight onto the back of this piece of foam to act as our little hidden door. Now this one ended up being a little bit too narrow for all 4 pieces, so I trimmed one down so that it had enough room to add our toothpick. Now, unlike the previous door, we're not going to trim anything off of this. We're going to leave everything exactly as is, because we also want this door to only be openable from one direction. So that's just kind of going to create a little stopper so that it doesn't open in the wrong way. And then we'll attach our archway back onto the outside on the back, and make sure the door can swing open freely and trim any areas that kind of prevent that. Alright, so now we can cover the outsides of our archways, our walls, our doors, and we're just going to add a little bit of the 3/4 craft stick into the outsides. I made up a quick little 2-stone walkway that I can put on the top. And we've got 2 different kinds of walls. We've got just a regular wall here, which I'm going to attach a wooden base to. And then we've got passageways, things that are designed to have areas that kind of walk through. And for those, I made these little clear acrylic bases. And they're going to go across the bottom so that we don't lose the visual of the flooring that we have on our other areas. So these can be used in a variety of different places, and you don't really have to worry about the floor matching up with everything. Now for our hidden door, we want it to appear on the table as though it is a wall. So we're going to mark out where our door hinge is going to go, do a quick little drill out, and then this little wooden paddle piece here is going to attach permanently to the bottom of the hidden door wall. And we're going to fit the door in place, make sure everything works. But we've got this little nub on the bottom here, and we're going to trim that off. I like to mark it, pull it back out of its little peg hole, and then trim it, and then put it back in. It's an extra step, but it makes it a lot easier than trying to fiddle with it while it's attached. Alright, nice and simple. Okay, now that we've got everything assembled, it's time for painting. So after base coating everything in a nice coating of Mod Podge and black paint, I use a little bit of Artist Loft Gray to do an overbrushing of all the pieces. Now I'm not going to just do the stone, I'm going to cover everything, including the wood. Then I'm going to use a little bit of neutral gray to dry brush on some highlights. Then using a little bit of raw sienna, since this is going to be in a sewer, I'm going to grunge it up a little bit by adding a light dry brushing onto all the sides. And this is just going to add a nice little dirty and grimy effect. And then same as the floor for the tiles, I'm going to stipple it onto the top. Then using a little bit more neutral gray, I'm going to reacquire the highlights on the front and back. And this is just going to pick out the highlights and still maintain that little grungy effect. Now for all the pieces that have a wooden door, we're going to go over the wood with some raw umber to kind of cover up all of the black overcoat painting. And then once that's dried, we're going to give it a nice timber appearance by dry brushing on some raw sienna. Now be careful not to go a little too heavy like I did here. It dries a little bit dimmer than it does on camera, but you can still accidentally go a little bit overboard. Then I'm going to add a little bit of weathering with some unbleached titanium paint from Artist Loft. and this just gives a nice little bit more of a warmer and aged appearance. And now that everything is painted up, we can go ahead and attach our clear acrylic bases to the couple of pieces that are going to have a walkable area. So now we've got an archway with a nice clear base. And the same as we did with our hidden door, we can attach the door to the base and then take a little bit of hot glue and glue the framework around the door. Alright, and that is going to be it. Here we are with episode number 12 finished. Alright, this was an interesting one. I have made doors before, but I haven't made functional doors like this in quite a while. So it was an interesting thing to kind of relearn the process for myself and experiment a little bit with making a hidden door. And I gotta say, I am loving how it came out. I'm loving how it kind of blends in with the rest of the walls. It's really gonna make a few extra layers of gameplay a lot more interesting for the players that I have at the table. Alright, so this is almost the end of the series. I think we've got one more video in us. We've got to make the upper walkways for these hidden walls and hidden rooms. So that's going to be the next episode. Please come back again and finish out the series with me. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that like button, subscribe for future content, comment down in the comment section, and we'll see everyone next episode.